All right, good morning, everybody. If you want to get settled in, I think it is 9 o'clock. And then I believe Mr. Collins is our chairman for the engineering committee. And then, of course, Jason Carter, our chairman for the full board. So, yep, so it looks like it's up to you to call us to order then. All right, sounds good. All right, so let's do the roll call then. Mr. Collins,
Here.
Dr. Ash,
Here.
Eddie Jett,
Here.
Alton Heathcote,
I am here.
and Jason Carter. All right, very well. We have a quorum then for the engineering committee. You'll notice that we'll reserve our public comments. This will be a continuous meeting. We won't adjourn because we'll just flow right until the full board meeting. And we do have 30 minutes, so that's plenty of time to do what we need to do. And if we run into any trouble with that, if something sort of expands beyond that allotment, then when we get to the committee report, we can just pick it up from there and go forward. All right, so then we have application review. Let me get there for myself. It'll be at the very bottom. You've got 7 documents on your iPad. At the very bottom, you'll see where it's denoted with ENG for Engineering Committee, and then Trevino is the application. I just put the application there for your reference. We're not necessarily reviewing the application so much as we're trying to answer a question that has arisen in that application. And Pathway 5, as you know, which sunsets on the 30th, requires an unaccredited engineering technology degree and 12 years experience. Mr. Trevino meets all the requirements except his education. Purdue it's currently ABET accredited, and so it's not unaccredited, which that's the pathway under pathway number 5, that new pathway that was given to us just this last legislative session. Of course, that's sunsetting in June 30th, but until then, that's the pathway before us. He doesnn't qualify in the other pathways. This is the only one that's available to him. So this is the pathway that we have before us for consideration. The university registrar did send a letter which reflects that his degree was unaccredited at the time he graduated. And so the problem, though, however, is that our practice is to interpret and apply Leicester law. We don't apply that retrospectively, since we make no inquiry of the accreditation at the time of graduation, but rather accept the education's current accreditation status, with the only exception being if they were within 2 years of accreditation. As you know, if they're working towards accreditation, there's a allotment for that. So the question before us is, are we willing to open the possibility of making further inquiry at the time of graduation as well? And obviously, typically there wouldn't be any benefit for that in most circumstances, except for with this pathway. Typically, it's going to be an accredited pathway, and so most folks aren't going to be upset, or try to retrospectively look for consideration, because if it's accredited now, they're not going to try to undermine their standing in that application process by looking backwards. However, with this case, it being that we have an unaccredited pathway, it sort of creates a wrinkle in that. So we're just having to look at that and make that consideration and have that discussion. Do you believe, basically, is there a good justification and basis for retrospective evaluation when applying this pathway number 5? So that's the question before you.
Any comments from anyone?
You could, on the screen, yep.
Sorry about that. I do know that there is the exception associated with the 2 year, like Lipscomb University went through that when they got their accreditation, or before they got it. The folks that were in the program, but they were within 2 years. They were about to graduate, but Lipscomb was within 2 years of getting, or at least being audited for their accreditation. They were considered acceptable. None of us like this piece of legislation, and we're glad it's going to sunset in 25, but it exists now. I'm assuming that the university that he attended got its accreditation.
It has. Purdue is accredited. It's ABET accredited now, and that was the problem, is that it's an unaccredited pathway, and he's got a accredited, basically, degree as it stands now, because Purdue has they got their accreditation,
which is okay. I mean, we do have an allowance for that, as long as was it accredited within 2 years of his.
one. His degree for construction technology was accredited on October 1st, 1981. It went through 1993, and then it transferred over to current. He graduated with the degree on May 9th, 1980, so was within the 2-year period where we would consider
Okay.
accredited, sir.
Okay. That's what I understood this to say, but I wanted to verify that. So based on the way the rules are structured now, I would defer to Laura and to you, but it appears that he would be eligible, and he's licensed in 2 other states, well, maybe more than 2 states, but apparently actively practicing in 2 states.
Yeah, that within 2 years applies to accreditation, not, so yeah. But this is an unaccredited pathway. See what I mean? So it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around, but there's some similarities, but not exact in that regard. So what we could do, if the board says, yeah, we'll go retrospectively, but we'll just apply that same sort of logic and say that if they were within 2 years of accreditation, but were unaccredited time, then we'll accept that. We
Yeah,
could do
but
that.
he's apparently, I'm assuming that Indiana and Ohio and the other locations where he is licensed require the FE and the PE to be passed.
Yes, sir. He'd have to pass all of that. I mean, he'd have, we're still missing, I think his exams and his references. He'd have to produce all of that.
There was one reference, I think, that he didn't provide, but he had 5 listed, and 4 of them gave him glowing comments. I mean, there was not a single anything but exceptional or outstanding or whatever the best you can get on that is. So, and he's got how many years? A lot of years of
It's a lot,
actual
yeah.
practice experience. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot.
So I'd say, I think, given the fact that he's passed the FE, passed the PE, practiced for 150 years, and has great references, and is licensed in other states, that I would recommend that we allow him to be registered in the state by comity.
Okay. And if you want to make that in form of a motion, and then we'll just take a vote.
I would make that motion, but leave it open
Sure.
for discussion.
If we are strictly applying,
Doctor, your mic, yep.
if we are strictly applying this rule here that's going to sunset, and it says unaccredited engineering technology curriculum of 4 years, and that's what he has, and that's what he graduated with. I'm not seeing the hurdle here.
No, it's just we don't typically do retrospective reviews. We just don't dive into their accreditation status of the past. So that's why it's a new practice. So and as a result of that, we wanted to discuss that with the board. And so yeah, if you didn't see a problem with that, then it sounds like you would be agreeing with Alton over there. So then that's probably where the discussion might be going. The only thing we would need as staff is, how would we treat others like that? I'm sure there's going to be folks that, whatever we do here is a precedent. So we want to make sure that we kind of work out the particulars of that and sort of have a sort of at least a loose criteria about what we would accept. And obviously we could reconvene the board as well. But with the statute running out in June 30th,
Yeah.
we probably got a couple meetings there. So we don't want to, I'm not expecting a big sort of tsunami of these type of applications, but I don't have a crystal ball either. And if we get back to the office upstairs, and we get more of these applications, and I would like some parameters or guidelines, criteria as to how we would treat those.
When you say retro, is that what's the origin of that? Where does that come from? Is that a law interpretation, or
No, it doesn't seem like there's any prohibitions against that. We just don't have a precedent that we can point to for that, and so that's why we're working out. Yeah.
I'm kind of like Dr. Ash, just from a mindset going back in time. He received a degree that was unaccredited, and then when it became accredited, obviously they went through some changes of process to get that accreditation. So it seems illogical not to consider that, and to just take it as accredited now. I guess that's the confusion.
Sure,
But it's
yeah.
not. I don't think it's a big deal in this case, but.
Especially if
I think that that's supported in the rules, because in the rules, in section 10, is 120 the 10, it says that, that it would be at the time of graduation or within 2 years of graduation. So I think we need to be looking at the accreditation based off of
When.
what it was at the time of their graduation, not what it is today, if we're following the rules.
And I think that's what you said, Heidi, that it was accredited within 2 years of his graduation, right?
Sorry. Yes, he was accredited in It was accredited in 1981, and he graduated in 1980. So if we
Yeah.
go by that 2-year period, he was in the 2 years of,
So by definition, he meets the criteria.
for an accredited
Well,
engineering program?
under this silly rule.
Yes, so we've got a motion on the floor, but we need a second. for that
Second.
motion. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from anyone? If not, I got a couple on his application. When I was looking through all this, there's some discrepancies in his application that are pretty significant, that I think are things just mistakes in what was written down. Like there's one of his employments where his start date is 2 months before his end date. And you add up all of his experience together, and it equals 65 years, and the guy's 66 years old.
start practicing right off.
Well, he was a prodigy. That was a prodigy right there.
Yeah. But the other thing that I think is important here is that I think the requirement is that he has to have references from 3 Tennessee PEs, and I think he only has 2, based off of what I've seen. So we need to make sure we get that other reference from Tennessee.
Yeah, and our vote is just to settle that one question, but he'll still have to,
Yeah.
So thank you for pointing that out, and duly noted for sure. But we'll reconcile all that before we, stamp it.
Also, what was his home registration state? What was his first? Because he didn't fill
Stand
that
by.
out in his application.
I think it's Indiana.
Because he put his name down for that jurisdiction.
Yeah, his application shows that he's registered in Indiana and Ohio. So there's one of those two.
But the question there, he filled out, he didn't.
Yeah,
That's
that rule
very
was,
short period.
yeah, so that rule was kind of a way to satisfy not going back and changing the law to make something like this permanent. There was a particular case where there was someone that was trying to get registered and was being pretty aggressive with their representative. And so this was a compromise rule that was put in for a year to accommodate that.
Okay, so then we've got a motion from Alton, and we've got a second from Dr. Ash. Chair, if you're ready, we can take a vote on that, a voice vote?
Yep.
All right, in that case, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very well then. And then, Mr. Collins, just be prepared to sort of give a summary when we get to the committee report and the full board. Of course, you've been there. So anyway, and then on that piece, so now we can move to mapping modules. Mr. Carter?
So I've had this conversation with several people over the past few months, and it's always been an issue, but probably with the availability of better public mapping data. The state has statewide LiDAR that's pretty accurate, accurate to less than a foot, things like that. I've heard stories, I've not necessarily seen it myself, but I've heard stories of engineers using that as the basis for design instead of using an actual field survey. And so I wonder, and obviously we know that if the engineer of record's putting their seal on it, he's taking responsibility for it. And this is not to discredit that, but I wonder if it wouldn't be prudent for us to issue some sort of a public statement or a warning, just, look, you need to understand that if you're going to do that, you're taking on that risk.
Just need you on the mic there. I can hear you fine, but we just want our folks if they're on the meeting. Thanks.
Does the record from the state or the information from the state come with a disclaimer that people can use that at their own risk? Or
I'm sure it does. I've not
Yeah.
paid that much attention to it, but
Is it something where the board could issue an opinion, maybe not a ruling or anything else,
Right.
something like it's the opinion of the state board that signed and sealed surveys be the basis for all signed and sealed civil designs? It's not law, it's not a rule,
Just a recommendation
it's just
or an
an
opinion.
opinion that probably will carry some.
right.
I agree with that. I will say this, that what we've seen is we have both MicroStation and AutoCAD in the office. When you use MicroStation and LiDAR, it's relatively accurate, pretty close. In our AutoCAD, because there's something in the software where it won't read necessarily through trees, if you've got any overhang at all, it can be as much as 12 feet off.
Right.
So we know better than to use that, but we wouldn't do that anyway. We do actual physical surveys. But we do use LiDAR for convenience to kind of get an alignment
Right.
and look at potential ground elevations and things like that. That's no different than using Google Earth and the profiling thing. You get a relatively close idea, but we know it may or may not be accurate. So we always do the field survey. But I agree with you, and I do think it may be a good idea that we offer that as an opinion. I don't think we need to give a big, long, elaborate rationale for why,
Right.
just a simple opinion.
So if we were to issue this as an opinion, how would that be made available to our registrants?
Since it's a technical opinion, it seems to me. Tell me if I'm wrong, but the first thing that comes to mind is your reference manual. Seems like a good probably edit there, and that's typically where your folks go anyway. And that's something that you can just point them to. So, Mr. Carter, if you want to just take a look at that reference manual, and then if you want to make a couple recommendations, some edits that you think might be helpful, and then we can run that up the chain, get all that checked out to make sure that it doesn't bump into any prohibitions or be interpreted as rule or statute. I mean, obviously it's advisory only. And then once you've done that, then we can vote on it at the next meeting.
One other thing, whatever opinion we offer, I'd kind of like for the surveyor's licensing board to look at that too.
Right.
And give a review comment.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, I think that would carry more weight because I'm sure they would be supportive of this, and I think that would carry more weight if both boards are saying the same thing.
Well, you're being good. Actually, the proximity of your meetings are adjacent, so that works out well because your next meeting is February 6th. Theirs is the 20th on February. So, I could take the edits that you agree on. I mean, I can have them look at it beforehand, obviously, not to waste their time, but they can carve it up too. It's just easy, really, to do that while they're all together instead of we're chasing each other on an email thread. And there's 4 of them, so that'll be actually pretty easy. I can just take what y'all give us and then just get them to take a look because that's their work product at that point, and they can look at that edit and I can report back to you.
All right. That's all I had for that item.
Okay. Then
What did are we gonna, Jason, are you gonna try to craft some sort of language and then let Glenn, send it to Glenn or I guess Glenn, I guess the protocol is send it to Glenn and he sends it to everybody else and we review it, give it back, and then we ask the surveyors to take an editorial review.
And typically what I'll do in that situation, if it's like, we start getting into the weeds and making some real content, then I'll kick it all to you guys. But if it's if I get added and it's pretty straightforward, then I'll just wait till your engineer committee meeting or the next meeting, because at that point it's not a whole lot to review. But either way, so yeah, you'll get it one way or the other. You'll get it in a committee, the full board meeting, or you'll get it in email, but you'll get it. All right. So then, unless there's more comments on that, Chair, it looks like we've got new business, and then we won't adjourn since it's a continuous meeting. We'll just flow it, we'll sort of recess until our full board starts.
Okay, sounds good.
Any new business then for the committee? No? Well, then in that case, I think we can take a quick little recess, and then we'll have our full board here in a few minutes. All right. Mr. Carter, if you want to hit that gavel, I think we can run from there. Yeah. So, if you want, I guess if you all need to call it to order, and then we'll do the roll call.
We'll call the December meeting of the Board of Architectural Engineering Examiners to order.
All right.
Begin with a roll call.
All right. Yes, sir. Jason Carter.
Present.
Frank Wagster. Here. Blair Parker. Here. Melanie Doss.
Here.
Rick Thompson.
Here.
Brian Tibbs. Dr. Ash.
Here.
Jeff Nally. Alton Heathcote.
I'm right here.
All right. Eddie Jett.
Here.
James Collins.
Here.
All right. Very well. We do have quorum, Chair. If I could, just before I read the notice, just want to take a moment to just sort of highlight the public comment period that's located at the end of the agenda. We just, if those that are in the audience here, if you haven't signed in but would like to make some comments at the end of the meeting, you're welcome to do that at that appropriate time. But please go ahead and sign in so I can recognize you and give you that opportunity. And those online as well, if you were wanting to make comments during that time, just please sign in on the chat box there, and we'll make sure that we give you that opportunity as well. All right, meeting notice then. The notice of the December 5th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Architectural Engineering Examiners has been noticed on the websites since July 5th, 2023. This month's agenda was posted on November 25th, 2024. And then I don't have any announcements. So unless the chair or any of our members had any announcements, I think we can dive into the agenda.
Before we do that, could since it's the time of year when we ought to do this, would you mind introducing the staff and let's recognize them?
Sure. To my left, and your right, and of course you know Heidi Overstreet. She's our admin manager. And she's been with us for a little while now, and just really grateful to have her support. She's come back. She, like a boomerang, she left us and then moved with her husband. He's in the military, and he was his service brought him elsewhere. But now he's back in our backyard, so we're very grateful for that, and taking advantage of her expertise and what she has to offer as well. So, and then to her left, you'll have Ashley Troball as well. She handles your engineering apps. Of course, you guys know that. You get a lot of emails from Ashley. Of course, you've got Alex Griffey. She handles all your travel and administrative items as well. And all these folks are cross-trained in different disciplines, and so that's helpful too. So, there shouldn't be any disruption in our service, and that continuity of business continues to go forward regardless of what's happening. And unless we just have everyone just walk out, other than that would be problematic. But short of that, business just runs off as usual. So, and I appreciate these guys that make that possible. Thank you, Alex, Ashley. And then right behind us, you've got Tammy there. She's lined up against the wall at Rorick. So that's our architect folks. And so she handles all of that business. And then behind me, Phil, probably lurking. Is Phil here? All right. No, but he'll slip in. You see that bearded fella, You'll also see him in land surveyors. He covers them, but he also covers interior designers, landscape architects, and handles some of the verifications as well, and has access to some of our handle some of those tickets that come in cross discipline. So. We appreciate him. And then Megan, she's not here with us today. She's working from home, but was unable to be here. However, she handles a lot of our updates with our applications. Sort of our project liaison manager handles all of those technical applications, customer service transactions, things to that regard. And so and then of course you've got Miss Martin over here. To my right, your left, our chief counsel stepping in since we're running. They're going to fill that position here soon with our attorney, but she's stepping in. And of course, she's done this for many years prior to being promoted to chief counsel. Worked with the land surveyors and their board for quite a while. So, if she can handle those guys, she's got you guys nailed. So this shouldn't be any problem. And then Ariel Carter, she'll join us later, perhaps, and I think that'll be for the legal report. But if not, I'm sure Miss Martin will be putting on that hat too. So, other than that, and then probably right. Let me see if Chris is he behind us? Yeah. Yep, there he is. He's filling in for Phil, so he's lurking behind me instead of Phil. But Chris, he's our paralegal, and he sends that when you guys cruelly force our people to take that laws and rules exam. He sends those to me to grade and to make sure they're compliant, and then he collects the money on those case penalties, and then closes those out. But that's why he's back there recording your decisions as you make those. So thank you, staff and legal and all the support. There are a lot of folks that go into making all that happen, and I appreciate each one of them. They make an invaluable contribution. Thank you.
And maybe on behalf of the board, I'm going to say thank you for the outstanding work that you do. This would be impossible without this team of people, and I'm going to ask Ashley and Alex to give the engineer salute. 1, 2, 3, go.
I thought you guys are working on a secret handshake, but I bet they didn't have to learn that one. That came automatic, didn't it? Yeah. All right, I gotcha. All right.
I think we have one more.
Oh yeah.
Glenn's not going to recognize himself, so I'm just going to point out Glenn is our executive director. He's like he's a tyrant. No, he's very well, and we constantly go to him for questions when we get the complicated apps or disciplines or anything that has to do with things that are more complicated than in our threshold and things like that. And he helps with communicating with you all, and we all appreciate you. It's very entertaining, usually each board meeting, especially you, Alton. Never a dull moment, but. Glenn, you're very much appreciated.
Thank you.
And you really are the glue that holds the team together and the relationship with our board members. So.
Appreciate you guys. But
you weren't going to say anything for yourself, so I had to.
This team, they've come along with, we had quite a few new hires, as you guys know, a couple years ago, and these guys just taken on like fish to water and, really developed. And I don't get many of those questions anymore. And so they've really got a pretty good handle on these programs. And I know you guys know that as well, just on your correspondence. All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Unless there's anything else going on, I think we can move on to the agenda. We'll need to adopt that. Is there any edits or any comments as to regards to that? All right, we got a motion from Mr. Tibbs to approve.
Second.
Got a second from Mr. Wagster. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. And then, Mr. Carter, if you want to call out those votes, I'll let you do that as well. I didn't want to get in your way. I was just trying to get you warmed up, and so I'll fill in wherever you want me to. But all right, looks like the approval of meeting minutes then, October 3rd, 2024.
There is one item in the minutes I think maybe needs to be corrected. In the August minutes, it noted that Frank Webster made the motion and Eddie Jett made the second. And I think it was reversed from that.
Okay. Let me get there. So in the October minutes, when they were approving the former minutes in August, just a reversal on those motions. Okay, yeah, very well. Thank you for catching that. Yep. We'll make that edit then. Any other edits there? I'm waiting on Blair. He's my English major. Oh, nothing? All right. Ms. Carr, if you want to call off the votes then, and we'll just go from there.
All in favor, say aye.
Do we get a motion? I'm sorry, I didn't even,
Yes, we have a motion and a second.
okay, very well, thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, who were the motions on that one? There was some,
Not these two, or that was the first one?
yeah, that was on the agenda. So I guess we will need the approval, the minutes after all. So do we have a motion on that? Sorry. We got one from Mr.
Second.
Tibbs and a second from Blair Parker. All right, then we'll try that again. And then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, we can move on then. Professional society reports then. All right, let me just go down the list and then we'll pick up anybody else that maybe we may have missed. We've got Miss Anderson. Is she on or in the building? Let me take a look. Miss Anderson, are you online? I don't see her. Okay. All right. Ray Tant or Suzanne Heron? Yeah. Oh, all right, there we go. Miss Heron then is here.
Good morning. Oh, did it work? Okay, great. Okay, so Tennessee section of ASCE, we have been busy lately. Let's see, we attended our members attended the Tennessee Engineering Conference, and ASCE works with the students at that meeting, at that conference. So 9 out of the 10 colleges in Tennessee that have engineering programs attended the conference, and they had a little competition session. So the University of Memphis won, and the students from UT Martin came in second, and the students from Tennessee Tech came in third. So we're excited to have the students participate with us and get them involved in meeting the professionals and seeing how their careers can progress. Also, as part of the Tennessee Engineers Conference, we designated a new historic site, a section landmark, an ASCE section landmark. And it is the Tennessee Special Bridge Program from 1927 to 1947. So during that time, 17 bridges were constructed. 3 remain standing but are not in service. And so we presented TDOT with a plaque commemorating that program as a designated historic site. At this point, our membership is the highest that it's been for the Tennessee section. We've got 2,831 members across the state. 568 of them are students. So we're excited about our membership numbers right now. The West Tennessee branch is hosting the ASCE Eastern Region Leadership Training, which is called the MRLC, because, we need more initials for things. That's going to be in January. So hopefully the weather's good for that. And then all branches had new leadership coming in September. So any questions about ASCE across the state? So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haran. All right, Ms. Cates.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be there. So it's good to see you all. I'm looking at you on a little tiny screen. But my name is Ashley Cates. I'm the Executive Vice President of AIA Tennessee, our state component of American Institute of Architects. I have a fairly brief update. I'm sorry I missed August meeting. We're holding our state conference in Knoxville. And so it was a terrific event. We had over 300 attendees there for a celebration of architecture for our design awards. We also, if you don't know, invite all of our newly licensed architects to attend the conference for free and recognize them at the conference for their achievement. And it's really just the newly licensed architects receiving their initial license in Tennessee. And I really appreciate the licensing board staff and everybody helping us pull that list. And, just being able to recognize them. We couldn't do it without you. So, thank you for that. For the rest of the quarter, we have a McKissick endowment fund. And so we raised money, and that particular one is to be able to increase the pipeline for diversity within the profession. And so it takes about $2,000 to actually get licensed as an architect. And so what we try to do is offset the cost of some of that and try to increase diversity within the membership. So we provide scholarships and financial aid to members that will make the profession more diverse. So we're excited about that. We'll be announcing those recipients before the end of the year. So stay tuned. I'll be able to tell you the names at the February meeting. So that being said, we're going into planning for quarter one of 2025, and legislative session is upon us. And so we are gearing up for the session and what it has to unfold for us, and taking a look at anything that might impact licensure, the profession as a whole. Tennessee's built environment, a lot of times there could be some concerns about codes. So we're going to be on the lookout for that. We do not, ourselves do not anticipate bringing any legislation at this time. And so we will be prepared to be able to monitor any legislation that would impact the profession. Moving into March, we will plan our Advocacy Day on the Hill, and I will be able to provide those dates to you in February. And Glenn, I will reach out to you as well. We'll finalize those dates in the coming weeks for our Advocacy Day and what that will look like. And our talking points will depend on what kind of legislation is introduced. So stay tuned for that. It will likely be in March. And then we will also be kicking off our conference planning for 2025, which it will be back in Nashville. It will be in August. So August 6th through the 8th, which typically lands right smack dab in the middle of your licensing board meeting. But if you're here in town, maybe you can make it over to the Embassy Suites downtown. So it'll be the first time we're back in downtown Nashville in 10 years. Because of just the high rates. So we've got a pretty good deal there, and we're excited to be able to highlight the city and everything that's happening in Nashville for summer 2025. So other than that, we're moving along. I will work to get an update actually from our local components on their year end and how hard they work with the K through 12 schools for the pipeline. And I'll try to provide an update to you all on hip hop camps. I know we talked about that over the summer. To give you an update on all of those activities in February. So other than that, let me know if you have any questions. We are doing a new strategic plan coming up. And so we're wrapping up a strategic plan. This year is the end of it, and we will start a new one in next year in 2026, but we'll start the planning around April. So you may hear from our strategic planner as partners and allies within the organization and stakeholders for any questions of upcoming changes or licensure or anything like that. So does anyone have questions?
Thank you, Ms. Cates. Appreciate your time. Thanks for that update.
Thanks. Happy holidays, everyone.
You too. All right. Mr. Ridley.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Glenn. Mr. Chairman, members, I'm Nathan Ridley. I represent the Tennessee chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. Good morning and Merry Christmas. It's good to see some red there in the crowd. That's a good thing. Our folks are busy. It's they have an annual executive committee meeting, and it's this Saturday, and that'll gobble up the better part of the day. That's the it's post-COVID, it's kind of nice to see them come in. We'll all be in the same room together, and we do better. Sometimes we learn more at the break time from talking to people than we do on the items on the formal agenda, so we're pretty excited about that. I'm not a big, I know Zoom helps us and it's cheaper, but it's different. And it's just not the same as live and direct. Speaking of annual meetings, ours will be in April in Knoxville, Tennessee on the 16th and the 17th. Just a little shout out to our officers. We have a new president, Chris Jansen, who practices here in Nashville with the Civil Site Design Group. And then the president-elect, who oftentimes has the hardest job because he has to plan the annual conference, is Bob Graves, who has a solo practice in Knoxville. And we're excited and grateful for their service. And then the best job in the world is the past president, and that's Cameron Yates out of Memphis, Tennessee. And he should get a shout out because his firm has been very generous with the time of using his colleagues to participate in chapter activities. You don't get paid a nickel for being on the executive committee of any of these professional societies, but it's a lot of work. You have to do a budget, you have to plan a conference, you have to do a little bit of advocacy work, because you know me, every day is advocacy day. So we're very grateful for Cameron and his firm there. Just a little bit from the 30,000-foot view politically, if any of y'all been living in a cave, we just had an election. But on the state level, at the legislative level, we're still a ruby red state. It's the majority stayed exactly the same. People spent thousands and not hundreds of thousands of dollars in political campaigns for state legislative seats, and not much change. It's a 27-6 majority in the Senate and 74-25 in the House. And those caucuses have met in each house. I got a frog. The caucuses have met. I'm okay. I got it back now. The caucuses have met in each house, and the leadership positions will be the same. So Speaker McNally, our longest-serving legislator in the Senate with more than 40 years of legislative service, will continue in his role, and House Speaker Cameron Sexton will continue in his. Thanks, Glenn. I guess just housekeeping, sort of civics 101. Alton always likes a little bit of civics update, so we try to give a little something. The session will start on the 14th of January. They'll organize for a week, take a 2-week recess, and then come back in early April. The bill filing deadline will probably be middle of February, and hopefully they'll be done by the 1st of May, a typical legislative response. Like Ashley, our group, the landscape architects, like to be left alone. We will watch for bills. We won't have anything that will initiate. Well, I say that. We had something about native plants, but I'm not sure that'll rise to the level of a legislative initiative. I guess, just again, for background, what'll suck all the oxygen out of the room up in that Capitol building will be Governor Lee's proposal for vouchers for schools. And might be a special session, hadn't decided. He hadn't shared those thoughts with me yet, so I can't speak to that. But I know that'll be a dominant issue for the legislative session. I think our construction friends might. Tennessee's a good place to live. We know that. It's a good place to practice. And one of the reasons it's a good place to practice is we have a statute of repose. After 4 years, you're done. So you're not subject to liability for something for a building that's 20 years old. It's one of the best parts of being a design professional in Tennessee. The construction industry has proposed, and it'll be friendly, I think, to the people in this room, just a little tiny tweak to that. It won't change the time. It's more about a litigation matter that they'll try to tidy up. And I can't talk about it too much because I haven't seen it, but we'll share that as that goes along. That's all I have. We're grateful for your service. Just like being on the executive committee of the landscape architects, y'all don't get paid a whole lot. And I know we're professionals and we sell time for money, so we're grateful for your service. And that's all I have. Thank you. Happy to respond to any questions or comments. Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate you. Okay, let's see what else we got. Hannah Durham or Claudia Lofton, are they in the house? Okay. Do we
They
have?
are not. Well, Hannah is. Can you hear me? I'm Anita.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Yeah, I see you. Go ahead.
Sorry. Hannah is in the house, but she's kind of lost her voice. And Claudia and Tiffany are not able to attend today, so I'm going to be doing the society report. I am the president. My name is Anita Ryan. I'm the president-elect for ASID, and also I'm an active member in IIDA as well. We have been very busy and continue to be busy across all of our districts in the state. ASID, we wrapped up the Design Edge Nashville at Music City Center on October 4th and 5th. This is put on by High Point Market, and there were probably around 700 designers from across the region. So it was really good to meet different designers, architects, industry partners across the region. We were one of the hosts of the event, and we did a coffee and conversation, also provided a CEU by Benjamin Moore that day as well. So that was a really successful event for us. November 7th, we had professional development CEU at Myers Flooring on specifying fireplaces and understanding code compliance, indoor air quality, and appropriate fixture selections for that. That was by Hearth and Home. November 8th, Chattanooga had their monthly meeting and CEU, and they're holding their holiday party in Chattanooga this month, I believe this Friday at their monthly meeting. Our holiday party for Nashville is going to be at Thistle Farms on December 12th. And we are using this as an opportunity to also give back. So we'll be bringing in gift cards and things for the residential members of Thistle Farms, as well as participating and giving back to that organization. Our outdoor living event and CEUs are scheduled for February 20th, and that will be hosted at Ferguson's at their new location out near Mount Juliet. And we're already, like everyone else, planning for 2025. This is ASID's 50th year as a professional organization, so big year. And the state or the annual conference for national conference will be held in Atlanta in August. And then we will be having our statewide conference for our Golden Gala September 18th and 19th. So more information to come. We've already secured our venue, and I'm in charge, so there'll be lots of things to do for that. So look forward for more information on that. For IIDA, we had lots of successful events in October and November. October 3rd was our Design Awards and Gala. It was a very large success. There's probably 300 plus people there, and it was wonderful to see all of the wonderful interior design and architecture and everything that has happened over the last year or so, and to celebrate that. October 10th, Memphis had their Design Fest. The 11th and 12th, they had Zero Landfill and the food drive, and this was a huge success. They were able to divert 4,000 pounds of materials from the landfill, which is just huge from a sustainable aspect. And it's always a very successful event, but this year it's bigger than ever. October 22nd, NoxCon had their commercial furniture vendor fair. This was kind of special because, right after all of the hurricane, they ended up starting the hurricane relief drive for children's clothing to be collected at the meeting. And they had over 300 designers and vendors attended the event and to contribute clothing and shoes for the 11 families in East Tennessee. So that was very special. October 24th and 25th in Chattanooga, Knoxville. The newest emerging city centers held unplugged events to introduce all of the new city center members, as well as I had some conversations with Claudia and Allie, who was the president-elect, and then Susan from ASID, Susan Ballard-Gribble from ASID was there in attendance speaking to, at the Knoxville event, speaking to students on advocacy and understanding profession and elevating their knowledge and expertise. Also on the 25th and 26th of October, IDEA had their Southeast Regional CLC conference in Atlanta. November 7th and 8th. They also had professional development and workshops statewide. On the 7th, there was a speed mentoring event happening at Nashville at Belmont for portfolio review, resume reviews, mock interviews, and meet and greet. I think that was actually held at AI Corporate Interiors. November 14th in Nashville, there was a Strike and Design Bowling Bash, and that was kind of the end of the year social event for Nashville. And the 20th in Knoxville, our members got a behind the scenes tour of Knoxville new multi-purpose stadium. So that's kind of exciting with the new soccer coming and all the multi-use that's going to be happening with that. November 22nd, the Memphis City Center held their annual chili cook-off and canned food drive. And coming up on December 10th, we have the holiday party in Chattanooga, and that's going to be jointly hosted by AIA and IADA. January 23rd and 24th, a new initiative called Rise and Refine. It's going to be 2 days of professional development opportunities, both virtual and in person. So it's going to be a very robust schedule for that. So looking forward to that. Jointly, as ASID and IDA, we had our first Better Together event, focusing on bringing together conversation with allied professionals. We did, and highlighting what the student work has been in the state of Tennessee. And so all of the colleges were represented, or a good portion of the colleges were represented, and we had work and we had people come and see what all the students were doing as far as their boards and that type of thing. So that was a great success, good turnout. We actually even had some high school students that heard about the event. And their father was a mechanical engineer, and so she came to learn more about the different opportunities for the interior design profession in Tennessee, going, the colleges and stuff. So that was kind of exciting to see. October 17th, ASID, CIDQ, and IDA were invited to speak to the Interior Design Club at UTC. So we spoke about advocacy and the importance of, getting your certification, NCIDQ certification, and, different, really just understanding terms and understanding, what it means to be professional and ethics and different things going forward. And the importance of our allied professional relationships as well. Recently wrapped up Nashville Design Week, which is a great week concentrating really on the past, but the present and how those things can bring us more to a sustainable future. So there was a lot of adaptive reuse and a lot of historical different meetings, very diverse, wonderful opportunity that happens yearly. I do want to give a shout out to UTC. They were highlighted with CIDQ in their newsletter as the, for everybody to see that they are requiring to take their students or interior design students to sit for the NCIDQ exam portion, the FX, before they graduated as a term of graduation. Do not have to pass it, but they are requiring you to take it, as well as one well or lead. So I think that's very exciting. But having that, a big shout out for Tennessee, for UTC, nationally was wonderful. So that's all I have for now. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Miss Ryan. You covered some ground and you did well. So on your first run, so you right out the gate. And then Miss Finch. That now, is that our same Hannah Durham that formerly Hannah Durham? Just want to make sure we get it for our records.
She got married.
Okay, well,
She got
congratulations
married.
to
That
her.
happened in November as well.
Okay, well, we'll make sure we reflect our records when she gives those future reports then. And thank you for filling in and doing that. We appreciate it. Any questions?
I
or comments?
nominate the interior designers as the fun party group.
Hey,
Yeah, we put together a party committee.
We're
We're in.
We are at. Y'all want to have a party? We'd be more than happy to have a big group together.
Great. Thank you, Miss Ryan. And
Better together.
I did see a hand raised from Miss Cates. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, there was one or two little items, and they're not little, they're extremely important. And so I wanted to just give you all an update. This September or in October, the disaster that happened in East Tennessee. You may or may not be aware of I think most of you all are aware of TennSAVE, which it stands for Tennessee Structural Assessment Visual Evaluation. Sorry, I had to look at it because I always say TennSAVE. It's where our architects and engineers and some contractors are trained to be able to go in and provide structural assessment after disasters. It was not called upon, and we did reach out and offer those services to our local city and county mayors, as well as the legislators, to making them aware that coalition does exist to assist in disasters. After the first responders come out, then the structural assessment can be taken. So they were not called upon, but I do want to say that we are working. We have a component, they're part of our East Tennessee component. It used to be their own component up in Northeast Tennessee. We have about 30 or 40 members up there that are actively talking to city and county mayors about the rebuilding and making sure that they're rebuilding stronger. And we're working on being educated through FEMA. And if individuals take FEMA aid, the stipulations that they need to go through and make sure they're hitting in order to get that aid. And so I can give you a better update in February, but we're also looking at partnering with the Appalachian Service Project to be able to build back. So there was a lot of volunteer and aid given in the very beginning. And so now what we're hearing is preparation for winter and how cold it is. And people are trying to build back, wanting to make sure they're doing the right thing, but still trying to make sure they can get in their houses. So I just wanted to let you all know about that. That was a major thing that happened this fall, and a lot of the volunteers and members' time, especially in East Tennessee, have been involved in that. And I'll keep you updated if there's anything that comes of this, just of building back and individuals trying to assist in building back homes, but maybe not with the right licensure or anything like that. So just want to put that on your radar.
Thank you, Ms. Cates. Appreciate that. All right. Unless we have any more on what we've just heard, I just want to open the floor to any additional professional associations that may be online or in the room. So let me just pause just for a second and just see if there's anyone else that I may have missed. All right. I don't think I had any takers. So I think we're ready then for our next piece. Blair? Yes. Okay. Blair,
I may be branching a little bit, and you would probably expect that. But interestingly, this past Saturday, we had friends and family in town, so we took them down to Tom Lee Park along the Mississippi River. And there's a monument there to Tom Lee, who saved a bunch of people, right, back in 1925, so right at 100 years ago. And on the plaque it says, and I'm not going to bore you, but on the river as a steamboat, the M.E. Norman, carrying members of the Engineer Club of Memphis and the American Society of Civil Engineers and their families. That's who this man saved, okay? And so I'm there with these people, and I'm thinking, I mean, it's pretty impressive. The park is impressive. Yes, there's plenty of landscape architecture there, but all the professions that are represented here are represented there at Tom Lee Park. And it was really sort of cool, and I was explaining all of this to family and whatever. So all this to say, thank you all for everything that you do. And this was a reminder, sort of a jolt that, hey, the professions have been around for a long time, and the professional societies as well. So it was just a little comment, so thank you.
Well, thank you for tipping your hat to our associations. They are integral to what we do, and so I thank you for acknowledging that. And for all those that represented here today that spoke too, I know that, again, you're taking time out of your schedule to do that, so appreciate you charging forward. All right, unless there's any other comments, I think we're ready then for, yes, sir. Yeah. I know you've been angling over there, and but they're not looking for instructors, just students.
I think we put a condition on that. I think we put a condition on that Ash has to do the hip hop.
Well, now you just spoiled it for me. We have a halftime show when recess, and he was going to do that, but now it's out there. But yeah, thank you for your eagerness. See, you guys are paying attention. We just can't slip nothing past y'all. All right, so I think we're ready then for the director's report. I've got a few items there, and I think only one vote that will, maybe two, we'll see. But budget report, let's start there. As you know, our fiscal year ends in June, and so we've got the reserve reporting, that sheet. I always try to bring that to you once that's available to us, so you can get the big picture, the 30,000 flyover, and then we drill down in our current fiscal year. And as you know, it reads as a P&L chart. The reserves, don't know why, but it just reads that way in reverse. You have your expenditures, losses up front, your profits, revenues at the bottom, and then you'll see the big buckets there. I'm not going to deep dive into each of these fiscal years. However, I just want to point out one big bucket in particular is that 725 account. If you look, it's about midway down, right there under grand total expenditures. And so that state professional services, 725, you'll notice that's our biggest bucket. Grants and subsidies, you know what that is. That's grants. That's our, so that's pretty self-explanatory. The other ones are pretty good in that regard as well. That covers a lot of territory, such as legislative liaison salaries, customer service team support, leadership specific to the division, data processing, our share of the rent and telephone billing. So, we have to pay rent in this building along with everyone else. Now, we may see a decrease in some of that as we keep adding, agencies to this building. But until then, so that'll sort of flex, and that gets revisited every single year based on the footprint and all of that. But that's kind of what you're looking at. And then 725 is, if you ever wanted more, I try to give you just what you need. But if you really want to nerd out on the stuff, and I can give you more of what those accounts are. It's 2 pages of just what 725 is. But I just wanted to kind of highlight that so you at least know where that bucket's coming from and what that is. But as you see, we're pretty much adding to the reserves each year, and so we're headed. We're doing well. I mean, even after total compensation package, I was wanting to see how that was going to go, and we had a lot of core enhancements too. We had basically, we'll call it Core 2.0. It's Reg Access is what we're calling it now. But with those expenditures, I really wanted to watch that. But we're on the other side of that, and we're. As you can see, we're still adding a little bit to there. So at some point, we'll probably have to revisit that, talk about that. There's been some discussion, I know, with grants, and there's been some other probably opportunities. Depending on, where that trajectory takes us, at some point we may talk about, fees. But we'll figure it out. We'll have that discussion as we get there, as we sort of get to that inflection point. But until then, we're doing okay. So then the next thing I want to look at is that trend analysis for this fiscal year. We didn't have a meeting we did have a meeting in October, but we didn't discuss the budget in October. We didn't have any new months prepared. So we're going to have to double up on that, and I've got 4 months for you this round. The only things that stood out to me were was basically October. I saw an uptick in expenses in other and technology. If you look at other, about midway, right above administrative cost backs for October, it's 18,000. And then also technology, a couple lines down, 12,000. So I got into the ledger for that, and we had CLARB annual dues due for other, and then so you're always that's going to be paid out of that account. Anytime we have dues paid, annual dues, it's going to come out of there. Same thing with NCWS, and all the NCARB and the rest. and some also enhancements under technology due to some of the applications. Megan's been working tirelessly on a lot of those applications in core. One, we want to get everything online. If we're still dealing, we want to get out of the paper business for a lot of reasons. But also we've been upgrading a lot of our transactions. And anytime you add a new pathway, that's more time in core because that has to reflect in core. And so, if you're going to see expenses that are going to accrue out of legislative session when pathways are added, it's just part of the deal. You got to accommodate that and enforce that and make that available to the public. So that's money. So that's what you're getting there. And so, but I didn't see anything else that jumped out of the ordinary. We're still trending in surplus, as you can see. And as you can see, just like how it is here and like the reserves, you have the P&L with the trending historical trends and so that the smaller print at the bottom so you can compare year over year, month to month to see where you're in the ballpark. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. And if I don't have the question or the answer for you, I'll get back to you and make sure you get what you need. And of course, in this ongoing conversation, if you see something in there and you just want to reach out to me, you can do that too, and I'll give you what you need. Any questions on that? It doesn't need a vote. That's just for your information. All right. Unless anyone had any comments on that, I think we can move to transcripts policy. And you've got that in front of you. I haven't made any notes to it, but other than that was last updated in 2013. And what I wanted to discuss and at least kick for your consideration is whether or not we need a transcripts policy in the sense that can we receive those direct from the student, rather than coming from the institution. And, that is the case in some of our certificates. Like I was looking at a certificate just yesterday and it was stamped issued to student. And so if some of our associations are taking them direct from the student, then, I would wager that maybe that's something that we can consider. We don't have to make that decision today, but I wanted to at least introduce the topics. And one of the primary reason too is just, obviously we want to do our due diligence. If we're waiting on something that we need to wait on, then we'll wait, but if it's something that maybe we don't need to based on, because there's other quality controls in place, then something to consider. And then if we did take it direct from the student, obviously I'm not going to take a printout, on an 8.5 by 11. It's going to be official transcripts, but would that be something the board would be willing to consider? So I just give that to you for your discussion.
I would have maybe a little bit of concern about that with things like Foxit and Bluebeam and other technologies that look, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I think the tendency of probably most students would be to be honest, but there's always that margin for a problem or an issue or somebody to be able to alter their transcript with new technology. And I think it's probably more appropriate and significantly reduces the chance for that to occur if it comes directly from the university. But I'd appreciate everybody else's thoughts and comments.
I do know that it comes with a cost. There is a fee to get the transcript from the university, but I agree. And it's not necessarily, it wouldn't be changing grades or anything like that. It would be qualifying that they have had the proper education. And I would agree. I think it would need to come from the university.
I agree with what y'all are saying. If there was one thing I might change that would be a little more lenient, would be, I think we need to require it on initial licensure. But somebody I'm doing a comedy review, and they're licensed in 8 states, and they've been, in the business for years and years. It's less important that the transcript be verified, in my opinion.
And that's our current practice now, so that you're well within that stride, because comedy, they go through typically they go through and get their certificate through CLARB or NCARB or NCWS. So they're verifying. Now, they do at times, like to the point I made earlier, they will oftentimes take the issued from, the student. However, but to your point also, they also have their license in other states as well. And so there's another layer there. So yeah, we weren't going to press the issue, just wanted to introduce it because there's an opportunity for us to look at everything. I mean, as times and, change and as technology develops. So sometimes that makes us more vulnerable. I was hoping you were going to let this slide so then I could graduate from Harvard from the School of Engineering, but apparently that's not going to happen.
Well, one just opposing thought, just something to think about too. We're not really, kind of what Melanie said, concerned about their grades. We are mostly concerned about if they graduated from a program. So I don't know if you mentioned there's other, I forgot the word you used, but other ways that we were able to validate that. Also, it is a cost to do it. Even if they changed all the grades to all A's or changed it all to all C's, as long as they graduate, I think is all that we're really necessarily concerned about. Is that, how are you able to, what is that other method that you're able to validate graduation from
Yeah, we weren't. If the board was going that direction, we were going to leave it wide open. It would have to be official transcripts from the registrar's office issued to student, and validated with the watermark, that kind of stuff. It wouldn't have been just sort of like, you write on this napkin that you graduate, and I swear, it was going to be a little bit more robust than that. So, yeah, we're not going to, obviously there's no traction, so we'll move on, but. We're always looking at our policies, our processes, and I think that makes us stronger. So and then sometimes we I think we can do that, but then as we're saying now in this case, no, we're not ready there. We're not there yet. So unless there's an alternative that we feel comfortable with, so we'll just keep it as is. I'm sorry, you have to get on them. Yep.
So. This came mostly from policy because it needed to be reviewed because it hadn't been looked at in a while, right? So I was wondering, how big of an issue is it? Is this something that comes up very often?
It's not huge. I mean, it's really a time delay more than anything else. So, we're always trying to make sure to provide as best customer service as we possibly can, but without sacrificing, public health, safety, welfare, because that is ultimately the mission. So it's a tension. It's a balance that we're always looking at and trying to strike. And in this case, it was 2013, so it was worth looking at. Yeah.
Are we accepting hard copies and electronic copies submitted directly by schools, or just?
They almost everything is digital now. I mean, they don't send us anything in the mail. It's typically what happens is they send a portal link with a password, and that password times out, and then we enter in that password on our end, encrypt it. It's encrypted, and then they give us the key so we can lock it, and then we see it, and then we just scan it over or slide it over to their account. But we're trying to get out of that paper business for a lot of reasons. I mean, there's too many gaps in transportation. When you're handing something from one to the other, that's an opportunity for something to fall between the cracks. So we try to leave, and that's another reason we're bringing all our applications online and to include as many forms as we possibly can too, because I don't want that stuff going through the mailroom. I'm sure they do a fantastic job, but they get a lot of mail. You can imagine. So when you got, you got a place with high turnover too as well, potentially. Not right now, they've been in great shape, and they again appreciate their support, but just philosophically, there's a better process, and so we just want to focus on that process and make sure that we're doing the best we can. And plus, there's a delay in mail. I mean, they call it snail mail for a reason.
I agree with what everybody has said. I'm very concerned about AI and the things that we see, almost weekly now, and so it'll be interesting to see how the defenses against these types of things take place. But I think this is a good idea for us to keep on our list, to keep re-reviewing, because it is a policy from 2013, and while it may not be flawed, it may need to be changed in the near future. So thank you for bringing it up.
Sure. And periodically I'll do that, and I appreciate the collegiate way for which you approach that. So, right now we'll leave it alone, and then move on to the next item. Then, unless there's any more discussion on those items, I think we're ready for the NCWS Southern Zone interim meeting. That is April 24th to 26th in Little Rock, Arkansas. And so, we have 3 funded delegates. I did look, I thought, we had a discussion, sort of sidebar, about, sending more than 3. I mean, obviously we've got 6, members, so we want to accommodate where we can. And, quite honestly, that hasn't been tested in a while because they're just, schedules didn't quite work out. But, and I love that we got some folks that are more active. I think that strengthens our board. We just talked about associations not too long ago. And so that's great exposure. And that's a reflection of the industry. And then that trickles down into our jurisdiction. So we need that awareness. I looked at one of our old TAs, travel authorizations, and one in 2019, a couple years before my time, and they had 5 on that one. So I checked with our attorney and at the time, and there's nothing prohibiting it. Obviously, administration has to sign off on all that. So, so the only thing we'd have to do, we've got our architects. They have 2 funded and 1 that's not. So that's easy. So we just put them on rotation, and they just kind of work their way down. And so they just know that, hey, I'm state funded this time, or I'm going through NCARB. So with you guys, that might be a little bit more tricky depending on how many we go. And you'll just have to work out who's going to be NCSS funded and who's going to be state funded if you want to send more than 3. So what I would probably do is your sure thing. If you're like, I'm there, you know what I mean? You've gone to committee or whatever. Those guys you want to put on probably your NCSS funded, because we don't lose that funding last minute. You know what I mean? We don't want to. So make sure your sure thing is your NCSS funding, because that paperwork takes a while to route and get approvals. So we can't turn it on a dime. There's a lot of signatures hitting that. So our state funded may be your maybes. Those folks would be your state funded. So with that, who would you like to go to Little Rock? Southern Zone is what we're talking about there, the interim meeting.
Jason, aren't you on a committee? You're not? If I would say that if we have anybody from Knoxville go, or Chattanooga for that matter, because it's such a long distance to Little Rock, that they ought to be on the NCSS ticket for the plane ride. Middle Tennessee is not too far, and certainly West Tennessee is relatively close. I don't know how close it is to Little Rock. Yeah, so it's better than driving to Nashville.
Yeah, so Dr. Ash is walking or dancing maybe on the way over.
He's hip-hopping to Little Rock.
Boy, I want to see that. We're going to have to, I cannot wait. All right. So back to the matter at hand. Do you want to just approve all 5 and then just pick your 3 for NCSS?
I would say yes.
Okay. So then
moved.
your 3. Get some help over there from your landscape architect. All right. And then for further discussion, let's just hammer out the 3 NCSS then. We've already got a motion on the table. He's just giving you guys a blank check, man. And Thompson. Hey, don't forget these guys when NCARB's right around the corner. Y'all know which 3 you then want to make NCSS.
James, you're on a committee, right?
So probably what, Carter?
I would say certainly
Collins,
James.
James
And Dr.
Eddie. There
Ash
you go.
is in Memphis, so if you can go, that would be a.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we'll
that's
do
a-
Alton and Dr. Ash. You guys will be state funded. And so, and then Eddie, James, and Jason will be our NCSS funded. So I'll report you guys to them, and NCSS will reach out to you 3. And then the state, basically, once we get approval through our TA, then Alton and Dr. Ash, then you'll have to book your stuff, and then and then we reimburse you on the back end, just like you do when you attend these meetings. You have to get the CONUS rate, obviously, or if it's a hotel rate, like if you can stay in that hotel, then we'll pay that rate even though it's above CONUS. But we'll work out the details. But that's how you'll do that. Okay. All right. And if you have any questions, you can ask some of these other folks. Like I think Melanie and Blair, you guys have done a couple state funded, and I know our architects have too. So. All right, so we'll get that done. So we got a motion from Blair, and we've got a second from Mr. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed?
One quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're down a member right now. Is there any progress on an appointee?
There is. I saw an application come through and some discussion on that. So, at this point, I floated on it's on my outstanding or pending, items on my report that I submit every week and monthly. And they're working diligently to fill that. And I suspect we'll have an announcement pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we ought to punish the new person by making them go to the NCSS.
Well, probably more to the point, there's NCWS funds first-time attendees.
Yeah.
So that person ought to take advantage of that.
Right. That's a good point. So yeah, so I guess if we don't have any opposed, then we'll just, that one passes. All right. I was trying to think if we need an amendment on that, but I don't think so. That one will be pretty straightforward. Okay. Next then, CIDQ annual meeting update. Ms. Doss, she went to the CIDQ annual meeting, and it occurred in November 8th through 9th in Chicago. And the next one, won't steal your thunder, so you go ahead.
Well, the next one is in Denver.
There you go.
The same time of year, and this time of year in Denver, I think they had, 8 to 12 inches of snow? So, Frank, you're going.
I like snow.
It'll be a good time, This CIDQ annual meeting was a 50-year anniversary for the organization. It was extremely well attended. They invited past presidents of the organization, 24 of which attended. So it was a real good session and a lot of meetings that had a lot of historical value to them, where we had people from the past that were recognizing how far the profession has come in the last 50 years and the organization and the certification of interior designers. One of the milestones in the meeting was the passing of model legislation. It is a template for non-jurisdictions as well as jurisdictions to use as they wish. They can adapt and adopt the language for the profession of interior design, and we are in good shape. I was reading through it and thinking, well, it looks to me like they referred to ours, when they were establishing this model legislation, but it was voted upon and passed. Last year at the annual meeting, I met with a few items of controversy. They've worked that out, and so it finally passed at this meeting, which was a really important accomplishment. Another item that was discussed was CIDQ is advertising on NPR the importance of hiring an NCIDQ certified professional interior designer. A number of us have heard the ads. I don't know if anyone else has heard the ads if you listen to NPR, but it promotes the profession. I kind of question that as to why that was a goal for CIDQ, but it seemed to be a consolidated effort to recognize examination, education, and experience, to differentiate between interior designers who are not educated, experienced, and examined. So it's a great campaign, pretty expensive, but there has been some positive response to it, and it was really a really good thing to hear. I will be serving as a director on the CIDQ board for 2 years, beginning January 2025, and so that's why I mentioned that Frank would be stepping in as the interior design representative for the state of Tennessee. Glenn, you and I have talked about you attending these annual meetings, and I'm not sure if Denver's the first one you want to go for, but
Yeah, we talked about, because I've been trying to work my way to some of our associations. Had the pleasure of spending some time with Blair and learning more about their association, and wanted to do that with CIDQ, but we're so front-loaded in the first couple years of this tenure that didn't have an opportunity to do that. And so looks like I'll get my chance. And then, so she was, I asked her, said, yeah, November, right? So where are we going? She said, Denver. Ooh. You know?
Bring your skis.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So it was very well attended. It was a great meeting. And so look forward to next year.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Doss, and thank you, Mr. Wagzer, for stepping up and in while she serves in that role and function. And congratulations to you that you were selected by your peers. That's quite an honor, and so we appreciate that representation. All right. looks like then we are the legal portion of our agenda, and so the legal case report, and it looks like Ms. Martin will be doing that.
Good morning. So yeah, let's begin with the legal report. I'm going to start with the first item on the legal report, which is actually 2 complaints. So those complaints are 202-402-7561 and then 202-403-0711. So the reason I put these together is that it's the same problem. And I'm sure if those of you who read it are probably not thrilled about this issue. So can you guys remind me, do you like me to just read verbatim the legal report? Yeah, into the record? Yes, okay. So both complaints are relating to the online platform Upwork. So there's an engineering complaint and an architect complaint. The engineering complainant is a member of the public who contracted for services of an engineer via the freelance site Upwork. Complainant had contracted with a person who referred to themselves by the name of a registered engineer within the state. As complainant proceeded with their communications with the freelancer, it became apparent to complainant the respondent did not appear to be who he was advertising himself to be. Complainant took it upon themselves to research the name which was being used by the freelancer and locate the contact information for the actual registered engineer by that name in the state of Tennessee. The registered engineer told complainant they had no knowledge of the project. Complainant terminated the agreement with the freelancer because of their conversations with the registered engineer. Complainant in this matter does not have a copy of the contract with the freelancer, and the freelancer cannot be located on the Upwork site any longer. The architect complaint is very similar. Complainant is a licensed architect in Tennessee who was contacted by a city to confirm site plans. The architect informed the city and the company that had submitted the plans that they did not create these plans and that clearly someone else was using their stamp and forged their signature. The company then submitted the plans. The company that submitted the plans pulled them immediately and has been cooperating with our investigator, telling us they had contracted with an architect on Upwork. With the limited details the company was able to get from the contract with the individual of Upwork, our investigator attempted to track down the person who used this stamp. So in the end, while we were able to get some details, we're not able to nail down who this person was, like specifically. Their profile has been removed from Upwork at this time. Some additional information when I started researching Upwork, basically if you report fraudulent activity or complaints, if enough people report your profile on Upwork, you'll be removed. So you can't continue to get work through Upwork. And that has happened in both cases, that both of these people are no longer on Upwork. So our investigator did do quite a bit of work. I felt a little bit like I was playing detective. And we did track down like a bunch of different various names and addresses, but in the end, I don't have a specific respondent at this time for either case, which is why my recommendation was at the moment to close, but sort of flag with the details I was able to create and in the hopes that if these addresses or names pop up again, I can reopen these complaints and determine if that is the person. Alton.
Thank you. This is disturbing on a lot of levels. One, I think that Upwork has a responsibility to validate whoever offers that claim that they're registered before they put them on their website. I think there should be some sort of a process that they have to go through. Look, it's relatively easy. Mm-hmm. You can do it through the licensing board. All you have to do is log in, put whoever's the person's name is, and it will come up whether they're licensed or not. So we're not asking them to do some extraordinary task or go to some great expense to do it. But I think they're the ones that have the responsibility to validate these professional service individuals before they put them on their website either. So I would make a recommendation that we issue either a letter of instruction or caution or warning or whatever is appropriate for this application, for this process, or this violation, I think, and for them advertising or engaging in architectural engineering projects without appropriately licensed professionals or not checking that they're at least, or validating that they're appropriately licensed?
So I think that we could send a letter to Upwork, maybe with a letter of instruction, just explaining the process by which they could verify proper licensing. But, you know, the letter I would write would be crafted very carefully because, you know, this is sort of the age-old, this is a well-argued constitutional question. Are they the newsstand just presenting the information, or are they engaging in the action? And historically, courts have been pretty lenient with what they consider to be like the newsstand type of organizations. But I think maybe sending them a letter explaining we've now received 2 complaints where somebody's stamp is being fraudulently used. Here are the processes by which you can verify that you are not aiding and abetting these people in fraudulent behavior. I would be willing to write a letter of explanation.
Yeah.
Yes,
It
Eddie?
could be a First Amendment issue.
Yeah.
Make it legally scary, Laura.
Maybe over the phone, but not in writing.
She'll use all caps.
What if you found out where they were incorporated, their home state, and sent a letter to their Secretary of State as well? Just saying you
For
advised.
Upwork?
For Upwork. And saying that you had advised them on the process and you've had 2 complaints.
Okay.
And then that might spur something else.
Mr. Nelly, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say from your position, you mentioned like the news standard, they just saying, hey, here's a service, but doesn't Upwork collect revenue as part of that transaction? If that's the case, then they're a participant in the transaction, so I think it raises their level of liability to a little bit different level. Upwork, for those that aren't familiar, you can go there for just about anything, right? I would say dog sitting services or create a website. But for professional services that require licensure and there's safety implications, it's a different model. So I agree there should be something sent to Upwork to say, hey, you have potentially some liability here. And from a technological perspective, it would be very easy for them to insert or automate to some degree the process where they can require people to prove who they say they are.
Okay. I'm happy to share this information with them. I just wanted to be honest with you guys about you know, our jurisdiction is over the practice of you know, the professions represented by this board, and definitely when we get into these platforms, and you know, I'm not naive. I think this is definitely going to be a bigger and bigger issue. It's sort of the way of the future. They're very convenient. I understand why people use these services, but I imagine we'll see more cases, you know, going up to circuit courts. You know, traditionally, you know, the First Amendment issue had gone all the way to the Supreme Court. So I just want to be honest that I do think that it does hit up against that argument a little bit. So while I'm happy to share information with Upwork, and I can try to find out where they're I'm sure I can find out where they're incorporated and all of that. You know, I have to be careful with. I can't really threaten anything, but I can certainly share information.
Right. You know, informing where they're incorporated of some ongoing problems that are hitting our board should cause concern on their end, and they may
I imagine we are not the only board that has seen something like this. So my hope is that enough people are letting them know that this is a problem.
I think it's important for us to put it on record that this board believes that they potentially have a liability here, and that we believe that they should check licensure before they offer these services, and put it on record, because if there's an uptick, I mean, if next time we meet there's 20, you've received 20 complaints, and all of a sudden we go back to uptick, it seems like we have a little more oomph to what our position is.
You know, there's like other states require credentials be on any kind of professional service advertisement. For instance, if that were a Florida engineer that did that, they would be in violation if they didn't list their corporation number and their licensure on all of their correspondence, even being represented on that board. I don't think
The
Tennessee has.
engineer, the engineer would be
the-
required, yeah.
The engineer or the architect, they have to list their credentials on every website marketing, everything. And I don't think we have that here, but that may be another step that we look at to mitigate
I do
some
think
of
the
these.
people that contracted with them legitimately thought that they were contracting with a licensed architect and a licensed engineer.
Let me ask you
James, did
this,
you have
is
something?
it's a case that the fraudulent person is going, I'm just saying, they go to the Tennessee architects and engineers list, and they pick one out, and they use their name and their number, and then make their claim through this upload. And then the person that contracts with them goes and checks the licensing board, and unless they turn around and call that person, they'll say, oh, there he is, and he's registered, and there's his number. So what can Upload do? You know, it needs to be taken another step.
Right.
They can't just, you
Well,
have to call.
luckily in
you
both
have
of
to
these
call
cases, it
or
seems
make
like there
contact.
were some, like, other protections in place. For instance, one of
Right.
these, you know, these plans had to be reviewed by a specific municipality, so they reached out to that person to verify.
Right.
Because of course they have that person's accurate contact information, and then that person was able to say, that's not me, I did not create these plans. So
Yeah.
I was happy to see that in both cases. It seems like there are some additional barriers. But yeah, you're right. I think that's the problem is the person that contacted with them, if they had gone to our website, Verify, they would have seen the name and the license and said, yes, this person is licensed.
Right.
James, did you have something?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's something that we could do to kind of help get this information out to warn people, you know, whether it's, you know, do we do something like what Florida has done to say that our registrants have to have that information on all their web posts and everything that they do to help sort of ensure that that information is there that provides their license information and all that. And is there something that we could do, post on our website, even to warn people, caution people that this activity is occurring, we're seeing an uptick in it, just, you know, make sure that you go an extra step to validate that you're actually talking to the same person as what's on these social media sites.
Consumer Affairs will typically do a lot of that sort of customer advocacy, and sometimes when we do our outreaches, we'll get into some of those best practices. But you know, as far as to enforce best practices, we couldn't do that unless there was a rule or statute in that regard that gave us some legal standing. But auctioneers, I can give you one case point. They do that. They're required in their rule. I think there's maybe their statute. They have legal standing for their advertising, which says that they have to put their firm and their license number there as well. But until we have something like that, then there's no enforcement. I mean, but to your point, you could still, when we do those outreaches and do those sort of customer advocacies, along with some of our appropriate agencies that spearhead some of that, as described earlier, we have opportunities then to do that and to reiterate that and highlight that over and over again. And that's also why Tennessee Engineers Conference, I spend a little bit of time talking to the consumer, because that's all of us. I mean, we're going to really use a realtor at some point or a real estate appraiser. Maybe, you're all over the design profession. You know what to do. This is your world. But at some point, you're going to have to call maybe an electrician or a plumber or or maybe you're into contract with an auctioneer or whatever. And so we're all consumers. And sometimes, we take for granted what we think is automatic until it happens to you. And then you realize, contractors, right? You're like, I'm going to go get a handyman to do this. And then next thing you know, you got a codes guy showing up at your house, and you sort of inadvertently backed into that and didn't think it was a big deal, So that's a good opportunity in those outreaches to just take up a little bit moment and just sort of have that dinner conversation with everybody that's sitting there.
I mean, if nothing else, we could make our registrants aware that this practice is going on, that we're seeing it, so that they are, cautious about it as well and making sure that they're protecting all their information.
I would encourage all of you to go to Upwork and make sure you don't have a profile that you don't know about. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was going to get all that, Jeff. I was really getting into it, and I realized probably others will need
Yeah, so a lot of folks that probably located in the States are probably less likely maybe to go that route and falsify documentation, licensing numbers and everything else. Folks overseas, it's just cut and paste, right? They don't care. And so it is going to be an ongoing problem. But I think from what I was trying to say earlier, but from a technological perspective, there are things they can implement in the process to make it more difficult, sort of two-pronged fork, both in person that are offering service, but also the customers that are consuming the service to say, here's what you need to be looking out for, here's steps you can take, here's a checkbox, have you verified this person with the state, and here's a link to their state where you can verify, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there are technological things you maybe can't totally prevent it or totally solve it, but you can certainly reduce the cases.
Yeah.
And those are things that we should not threaten, but suggest to Upwork, Fiverr, and all these other websites that are popping up dime a dozen to say, these are recommendations we think you should probably implement in your process because you are a participant in this process, so if you don't want to get pulled into this.
Yeah. Okay.
On our website, we have consumer services or something similar to that to go look and see if someone's licensed. There could be a blurb in there at sort of that moment.
And that's one of those, when you're doing your outreach, you want to highlight specifically is that verify option, So that's one of those links, and I believe it was in our slideshow presentation, I try to draw folks there because that's a great way to check and verify that they're actually talking to because you get those phishing emails, what they tell you to do, go to the actual website of that organization, you don't just click on that link. And, one of the things our technical expert over here, Ashley, she was letting us know that, you get a lot of those bots too that are, creating sort of, that are sort of flooding the zone, So, yeah, there's going to be, I think, a lot more of that. We just got to deal with it.
Actually, one thing we may want to add, when you send the letter to Upwork, is that they ought to require that any individual that posts themselves as a licensed professional provide their registration number. That way it's easy for any consumer to get access to that and enter the data and information and validate it.
Okay, so it looks like we have I guess we'll need a motion in that regard because the recommendation then was for a letter of explanation instruction to Upwork. So we'll just need someone to make that motion.
I've never heard of letter of explanation before. That's the first for me. Is that a real thing?
I just invented it.
It is now. I just want to make sure that we're keeping it clear that I'm not sending, this isn't going to be discipline, but but I think we should write them and
Yeah, but truthfully, the only thing keeping us from this being a disciplinary process is we can't find them.
Oh, yeah. So if we could find the individuals, I would have recommended unlicensed activity.
Yeah.
But the truth is, our investigator didn't phone it in. We followed it down the best we could to the various phone numbers and addresses based on payments and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we could not narrow it down to maybe we found a name that we thought this person might also go by, but then there's 12 people with that name and this, it's just.
Chasing it down is exhaustive.
Yes, it was. I just couldn't narrow it down to competently say this is the person that I believe I could not competently tell you I have enough evidence to go after a specific person for unlicensed activity.
Yeah.
So that is why I recommended close for the time being, but we have those details on file. So if they pop up again, we may try to connect it.
Yeah, locating someone, you would be. I worked on the Marshall Fugitive Task Force many moons ago, and when somebody commits a crime in your jurisdiction, physically present. I'm not talking about a cyber crime. I'm talking about physically present. That's hard enough to find. It's amazing how much resources that you would have to bring together to locate that individual. Now expand that out to what you guys were describing, a cyber crime where they may not even be in this country.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Like Jeff said, that was a good point Jeff made.
So yeah, that's it. It's incredible amount of resources and that would take, and still there's no guarantees.
So do you need a motion to
We do.
authorize Laura to issue a letter of instruction /
Yes, sir. We would.
explanation?
Yeah. So there you go. Do we have a second?
Second?
A second from Ms. Doss. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Okay, case number 2. This is complaint number 202-404-8551. This is a professional architect. Respondent reported on their application for renewal that he practiced architecture while his registration was in an expired status. Respondent provided a list of the 3 projects on which he worked during the inactive period. The projects were for square footage of 2,590, 4,312, and 5,000. Respondent admitted to having stamped all 3 projects, but clarified he probably did not need to because of the project's relative sizes being exempt from licensure requirements and that his projects were residential in nature. He stated in response that he stamped these projects because it made them appear more official. This was reviewed by Rick, and the recommendation was to authorize formal charges with a settlement through consent order in the amount of $1,500, being $500 for each plan sealed, and then require him to take and pass the laws and rules examination.
Can I make a recommendation to approve?
Sure.
So moved.
Okay, great. So number 3.
Yes, sorry. All in favor?
Oh, sorry.
That's right. Any opposed? All right. Hearing none. We're good.
So number 3, I'm going to talk about a little bit more openly instead of just reading the summary. So this is an architect. We actually have 2 complaints against this architect. You guys might remember from October, this was an architect who we put the case in litigation monitoring. He had been working with a colleague. The colleague had passed away. He was continuing to use the plans. And there was a question about whether or not he was using work that he had a right to use. And he said that there was an agreement between him and the deceased colleague. The family insists that is not true. So there is likely going to be civil litigation on the property rights of that. And at the time, this board requested that we ask him to produce sort of anything reflecting that agreement. So we did ask him for that. He did not share it with us. Meanwhile, he had this complaint, which was also presented in October. And I've put the October summary here verbatim. But the decision by the board from that complaint was that they wanted additional information relating to his experience and education. So Chloe followed up with him shortly after the board meeting on October 15th. And then when I was preparing the legal report for this meeting, I followed up again, and both times he has not responded to us. So I have put a recommendation on the legal report, mostly because I just wanted to share with you, we now have 2 cases, 3 instances where I feel like they are not really cooperating with the board anymore. But then Rick and I had kind of a conversation about this case after we sent out the legal report. And I think he's wanting to hold off on taking action on this case for the moment. And we'll continue to go after this person and try to get responses from them, with the understanding that we have now tried 3 times. So if he continues to not respond to the board, we might be bringing these cases back together to the board with recommendations related to just not cooperating with the board's investigation or providing the information that you've requested. So I'm open to any discussion, or if you all want to just hold off on moving forward with that case at Rick's suggestion, I'm fine with that as well.
Since we do have a recommendation, on the report, we would just need a motion in that regard then. So, Rick, if you wanted to make that motion, then we could do that.
I will make that motion that we, what would the motion be, to
I
continue?
think what I understood from you when we spoke is that you sort of wanted to hold off on moving forward on either of those cases, and our office would continue to try to get the requested information from him. But then my only caveat to that is he has not shown that he's super interested in cooperating. So if I continue to hit up against a brick wall, I might bring those cases back to this board together with new recommendations reflecting the fact that he's not cooperating with our investigation.
Quick question on the, let's say it did move forward, and I noticed that the recommendation for the penalty amount was $1,000. Is that something, if you really wanted to send a message, that you could enumerate those into 1,000 for stamping electrical design, 1,000 for mechanical, 1,000 for, because there's multiple items in there, and it seems like that's
assess $1,000, I believe, per penalty. And technically, the law says per penalty per day that the violation continues. I think on this board, that's sort of hard to say the amount of days the violation occurs in some of these cases, but we could certainly go after $1,000 per violation of a rule or statute. So we could definitely expand that penalty.
Yeah, if it did move ahead, I would recommend looking at, because there's
Higher
a lot of
penalties.
different pieces in there, not just one overall.
Yeah.
And that may be the represent after the motion, like if we get a represent after the motion, because there's still nothing happening there. And then, and again, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. If you've got an ongoing civil case, he might be advised, at that point as well. We don't know. The fact is we don't know. We're not getting the responses we need. So if it comes back to you after the motion, then we may very well add those penalties as you described at that point. So, and I don't recall, did you make that motion yet?
Well, yes, I would like to make that motion, but question before we get a second. Can we set a 30-day time limit or a time frame that if they don't respond by that time, then it'll automatically go back to the board?
Yep.
Is there,
Do you
I don't know, is it customary for 30 days? Yeah, what's the reasonable time frame? Because we have asked for 3 different things in several months in a row. So, and I think we need to make it as aggressive as possible, because this.
So what if we combine this case with the October case, and I can read that complaint into the record? It's number 1, Chris. That's number 1 on the October report.
And that'll be in the minutes.
So that would be 202-402-7561. I would like to combine these 2 complaints together, put them in litigation monitoring, and then I can reach out to this architect again, say we've combined these 2 complaints. We have asked for the additional information about education and experience. We've asked for you to either show us any proof whatsoever that you had this agreement with your deceased colleague, or confirm that you have none. And if we don't hear back from you in 30 days, then we're going to represent these 2 cases. We're going to represent these 2 cases to the board and consider taking action for lack of cooperation. How's that plan?
I like that,
Okay.
and Eddie, thank you for bringing that up, because this thing is very. It has a lot of webs all over it. I mean, there's a lot of things going on in the first and now this one that we need to address,
So the case number I want to combine it with, I had it wrong. I'm sorry, Chris just sent it to me. 202-400-5021. So I'm going to combine that with this item number 3 on this legal report, 202-403-53961, and then continue forward like I suggested.
Thank you. So I made the motion to go along with the legal counsel in regard to this. So
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion from Mr. Thompson in that regard, and we got a second from Mr. Parker. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none then, that one passed.
Okay.
I got just one question.
Yes, sir.
Are we in touch with the code enforcement office that reported this violation to let them know what's going on as well?
I do think we might have had some correspondence with them. I believe Chloe did have correspondence with them.
Okay.
Would you like me to reach back out to
Well,
them?
yeah, I think we need to make sure that they know that we are still working on this and trying
Okay.
to bring this resolution, because I think they're holding up building permits and all kinds of stuff like that based off of their complaint, and I think they need to know that we're in the boat with them on this.
When we don't know that they are holding up those permits now, because this thing has gotten kind of cold.
Right.
And so.
Yeah.
This is not the first thing this applicant or this
Yeah.
complainant has done, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for validation, I know we do a lot of plans that involve mechanical, electrical, and architectural. We don't think we're mechanical, electrical, or architecturally competent to do that. In architectural work, do architects normally do mechanical or electrical design?
Well, I think the word incidental is appropriate for if I have enough experience to do a foundation for something that we've done, a small foundation type project. I mean, I would never assume that I can do your job because I'm not qualified to do your job. I'm not going to do a full set of mechanical plans, electrical plans, structural plans, anything like that. If it's something that I'm comfortable with doing and it's not a major endeavor like this was,
right.
then I think my answer to you is yes. I believe there's an incidental opportunity for us to do small things because you're qualified to do that thing.
But they would be incidental. They wouldn't
Incidental. That's the word.
major.
No,
yeah.
exactly.
And we've had several complaints historically, so there's lots of precedents for this, and each time we've done exactly the same thing. We've found against the respondent and made recommendations for civil actions.
Yeah, and both cases are different. They're this one particular one involves a full set of engineered documents, and the other one doesn't, that I know of. So yeah, so incidental is the word I would use, and it's the word I always explain to either one of my engineering consultants. I've done this incidental thing, and I primarily, if I've done something, I would always ask that question: Have I overstepped my bounds? Is this wrong, or is this correct? And usually, it's you way over designed that, Rick. So, like you guys. No, but no. It's all seriousness. Thank you for asking that question. So.
All right. Looks like we're ready for the next one then.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just making sure I have all this written down.
No,
No, you're all good. It's a good time for Dr. Ash if you want to show us a couple of those moves.
I'm almost done. Okay. All right, so item number 4. This is complaint number 202-405-3701. This is a professional landscape architect. Respondent in this matter self-reported that he practiced on an expired license. Respondent appears to have sealed 2 sets of plans in July of 2024 related to gas station locations during the period when his registration was expired. All other plans submitted to the board for review were sealed within a time frame in which the respondent's registration was active. The recommendation after this was reviewed by Mr. Parker was authorize formal charges in the settlement thereof through consent order and civil penalty in the amount of $1,000. Taken past the laws and rules exam.
Move to approve.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
I got a second from Ms. Doss. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, that passed.
Okay, item number 5, complaint number 202-405-4301. This is an engineering firm. Respondent was disciplined in the state of Wyoming for having provided services for 99 projects without valid business registration. Respondent was assessed a $9,000 civil penalty as a result. It appears the respondent had not been aware that the firm license requirement in the state of Wyoming, but the individual PE who represents the firm within the state have been licensed there since 2004. Respondent appears to have also been disciplined in 2023 by the Board of South Carolina. Respondent properly reported the South Carolina discipline to the Board of Tennessee in 2023. This was reviewed by Alton Heathcote. Recommendation was a letter of caution.
I make a motion to agree with recommendation.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Tibbs, a second by Mr. Parker. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, we're ready for the next one.
Okay. Item number 6, complaint number 202-404-7271, professional architect. Respondent in this matter is alleged to have improperly utilized the plans of another firm, infringing upon their intellectual property rights and committing theft. Complainant in this matter later retracted the complaint after having reviewed the contract between the purchasing entity and the complainant. Complainant discovered in process of contract review that the rights to the plans have been transferred to the purchaser in the process of transaction. The purchaser directed respondent to utilize the plans. The two parties in this complaint agree that the use of plans was proper under the terms of their contract. This was reviewed by Mr. Heathcote, and the recommendation was to close the complaint, I guess, since the two parties have reached agreement.
We have a motion from Dr. Ash to accept those
Second.
recommendations. Got a second from Mr. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, that one's passed. All right, was there anything else on the legal report?
That is the end of the legal report.
Okay. The next matter of business then, we have the retrospective rules. And so basically, you recall that, the legislator, legislation up on the Hill, they required that we do a rule review every 8 years. And so we did that a couple, I guess, about a little over a year ago, 2 years ago. And then we met in executive session, just sort of flagged those things that we reviewed. And so that was what we marked for, or that we needed to, a rules or a cleanup on, and this is the content. So now you're getting to see all of that. Now, what we did though have, so there's a little wrinkle here. This board already had a rules package that was still floating out there that we haven't wrapped up for a rulemaking hearing. So instead of having 2 rulemaking hearings, we're just going to combine this together in one. So I just think that's much more administratively efficient, and so we're going to do both of those. And it actually works out fine because we also had a change in leadership administration as well. And so before, you'll recall, we had a copy and paste with the additional pathways in engineering. And we were advised by our new leadership that there's, instead of just doing a copy and paste direct from the statute, that it would be advisable if we just incorporated, memorialized our current practice and just put that instead. That's really the clarifier, because we're not really adding anything additional by just copy and pasting the statute. And since we've since decided how to handle those cases already, then it would just make sense to put that in the rules instead. So that's what we've done there. And that's on page 6, Rule 120.01.10.1. And I put that in your email as well. As a matter of practice, we're already, the board decided through our engineering committee some time ago, probably almost, I guess it's hard to believe it's been 2 years, but this has been ongoing for 2 years. We decided then to qualify the masters instead of the bachelors, and we qualify the masters by using that language from Pathway 4 if they're coming from an undergraduate with ABET accredited, and so that's the language you're seeing there. So what we're doing in practice, we're just putting that in the rules. So that's not necessarily new to us, but that'll be the rewrite for that. And then page 7, you've got Rule 120.01-10.2E1. And here, because we have master's pathways, it felt important and pertinent to clarify that, hey, you're not going to get the double dip, If you're taking credit for 1 year of experience because you have a master's, you don't get to also accrue that in the master's pathways and thereby undermine the intent of the law, which is 8 years. So we're just clarifying that because we've had some folks sort of push on that a little bit, and we're saying, look, you already got credit for that for path 1 and 2, and so And we don't want to, that's intended for path 1 and 2, but now that we have the pathways, it just makes sense that the clarifier is needed there. And then page 13, because the retrospective rules is primarily a cleanup, this part, there was a not necessarily substantive, but since we were removing quite a bit of language there, we wanted to make sure that we highlighted that as well. And the justification for the change there is that we want to ensure responsible charge does not interfere with widely accepted industry business practice or is non-competitive by disadvantaging non-residents. We don't want to tell somebody that, or somehow misinterpret that would misinterpret that rule to mean that you have to be an owner to be in responsible charge. That's a business practice, but we want to secure responsible charge. That's the whole point, and having that oversight. So we don't want to lose that in the mix, but at the same time too, we don't want to disadvantage non-residents or force companies to make owners out of everyone that's in responsible charge. So that needed a clarifier. So that's what was attempted to be done there. Other than that, and now I've lost. Alton had some edits because the definitions. He noticed that what was intended or passed in that original didn't translate. So if I may ask the board for a brief recess, Chairman Carter, if we can, for maybe about 10 minutes, let everyone sort of get one more look at their definitions to make sure if that's what they remember. I know you've already looked at those rules, and then we'll come back and get his edits after we get back from that. Does that work? All right.
Is there, was there one more thing after this, or is this the last?
No, there would be the public comments period, if anyone had any public comments, but then that would be it, yeah. And so I think this will go pretty quick. I say that right, but so might want to just make sure we take a recess. That's all right. All right, so we'll be back in 10 minutes. All right, everybody, if we can find our seats, then we'll kind of reconvene again and get this going. And all right, Chair, it's up to you. If you want, whenever you're ready, you can call us back, and then we'll get after these rules.
Let's reconvene our meeting.
All right, thank you, sir. So you've got the changes before you, and so I want to, and you've heard the things that I highlighted, and now I'd like to turn to Mr. Heathcote for a couple of the formatting, and I think there was an autocorrect in there somewhere, and so that's why I want to make sure we get that right. So if you would.
I'm sorry. There were 3 things that I had. One is under section I.
If you could take us to the page too, that'd be great. I'm sorry.
It doesn't have a page number on it.
It's very top right-hand corner there. I'm hiding it from you. No? Oh, you're looking at, okay. I was looking at iPads. Go ahead.
Section I. The practice of engineering is hereby explicitly defined to include the following.
No. And you're on, page 3 then, I. Thank you.
Okay. One of the things is we start off numbering 1, 2, 3, and 4, and in our version 7 edit, it just went on down to item number 13. It didn't indent at 4. Those aren't necessarily subsets of number 4. They're independent.
Okay.
The second thing is there was one that was left off, which should be item number 7. In item number 7 is being in responsible charge of the teaching of engineering. That was left off of this list, but it was part of the final approved version of the definitions that the engineering committee approved back in 2021, maybe.
Okay.
Whatever that was. And the last thing that I had is on my item 13, it would be item 8, Roman numeral 8. It says surveying incidental to the practice of engineering. This says including, but the actual definition it says excluding the survey of real property for the establishment of land boundaries, etc., which we intended. It should be excluded from that.
So let me just. Okay. So we're on Roman number.
Hey, Laura, I can give you this if you want me to.
That would probably be helpful.
Yes.
I was just going to verify Roman Roman numeral I.
Actually, that's just alphabet letter I, the way this is going.
Okay, so it's the Roman numerals that you think we don't need. Those are not supposed to be subsets of 4.
Correct.
We need to add in sort of between Roman numeral 2 and 3, but it might end up being 5, or sorry,
Yeah,
it might end up
that's-
being item 7. You want me to include the phrase being in responsible charge of the teaching of engineering.
Correct.
And then,
On what would become item 13.
yes,
Surveying incidental to practice of engineering, excluding.
excluding instead of including. Okay,
Right.
I got all those. But yes, I would if you want to share that with me, that would be helpful.
I'll give it to you right now.
Oh, okay.
Right. And you can leave out the doodling that he did on there. We don't need that in there.
Thank you.
Alton, did you have anything else on that? Okay. And then Mr. Collins had just a few things, and there was some formatting, and some of it just may be, the justification. I know a lot of you guys, some of our legacy members that worked on this for a couple years before Mr. Collins and myself would probably be able to clarify that. But he just had a couple things he wanted to discuss as well, so if you would.
So on page 5, where this is talking about the practice of architecture, item G, it talks about things that are not considered the practice of architecture. And then the similar thing is done on the next page, on item D, about what is not considered practice of landscape architecture. There's another rule that's 0120-01-03, which describes activities that are not engineering, architecture, landscape architecture. And so I was just wondering, should those paragraphs be moved to that same rule so that everything that is not engineering, architecture, landscape architecture is all in the same place and not in two different places and two different rules?
So you're looking at, so it's item G. Does it start with the phrase construction activities or not?
Yes.
Okay, and where are you proposing we move that?
To rule 0120-01-03.
That's not part of this rulemaking hearing,
No,
is it?
it's not.
Okay.
It's not.
That's why I'm confused. Sorry, I can find this.
Yeah, there's the section there that's called clarifications to offering to practice. And it has a whole bunch of stuff listed there about these things are, what is, and then there's what's not considered.
So are you okay with all the way through F? It's just G you want to move?
Yeah.
Okay. Is the board have?
Yeah, I wasn't part of the committees that looked at this, so I don't know if there was good reason to put that in that particular location or not.
Where are you?
So this is on page 5. It's under section 6G.
So yeah, section 6 starts out with like the practice of architecture shall be defined as, and then, it goes all the way through with alphabet letters A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And G specifically is saying this is not considered architecture. And he's wondering if that should be moved to a different rule that you guys have on the books. It's not in this packet because we weren't making changes to it, called clarifications to offering to practice. And so that says the following items are not considered offering to practice architecture, engineering, landscape architecture, provided that the architect, engineer, or landscape architect is registered in another jurisdiction. And then it sort of enumerates various things that they don't consider to be practice. Advertising, social media, like responding to, inquiries, client intake, using the appellation in a different jurisdiction. Most of them are about using the titles, right? But this would include construction. Like, are we saying, do we want to add construction activities to that other rule, or do we want to keep it here, sort of specifically excluding it from the definition of architecture in this definition?
And he's just asking for your justification, and that and not that you have to necessarily provide that. I think what we're saying is just, and you know, we've dived into all of this, and and just so as a caveat too, we're not trying to relitigate any of this, and it wasn't anything that I flagged either. I don't want you to get that idea either. But so, and I did talk to James and we were discussing it. I don't, if we're gonna get too deep into the weeds on this one, then perhaps that's an opportunity for the next rules package, because we're going to have to do a rules package for the MRA, for NCWS, and then if we get any other additional pathways that perhaps, I'm not saying CLARB's going to do one, they've talked about it, but if they did, there's going to be a rules package, and that rules package logically makes sense to come after legislative session, because something might come out of that requires a rules package. You know what I mean? And so what we do is, in that rules package, if there's something that's substantive or that's gonna sort of bog this one up, then my recommendation would be, let's pass this one and then revisit those items in the next one. And so, you know, it's because we'll have one on the Hills, because we're looking at the MRA, and plus we just want to see what the governor is going to do. And sometimes, you know, the last couple of years they may do something reform bill or whatever. I don't know what they'll do out there, and the legislative, what they have in mind for us. But you know, we got an additional pathway last year, and we got 2 pathways before that. So, you know, who knows what'll come out of that. So, you know, we don't. If you're inclined just to leave it where it's at, that's fine too.
I think I can kind of understand why they put it where they put it. This is my opinion. So, in this clarifications to offering to practice, these are things that are considered not practice if you are registered in another jurisdiction, right? So, if I'm an engineer in Georgia and I'm part of a big firm and I do maybe some client intake inquiries in Tennessee with the intent of passing that on to a Tennessee, you know, licensed engineer architect, that it's pretty specific to that right, those situations where somebody is licensed elsewhere. Yeah. And I think here in G, right, they're defining architecture and then they're specifically excluding out like these contractor exclusions. And I don't think that actually has to do with whether or not you're licensed in another jurisdiction. So I have a feeling that might be, so that doesn't mean I couldn't add a new section to 01.03, but I think maybe that's why they put it here, is that this is a whole exclusion, as opposed to this is for people that are licensed elsewhere, the ways in which maybe you can dabble in our state, but you can't really do substantive work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does that make sense to you? Okay.
The next question I had was, this is on page 7, under Rule 0120-01-24. And in there, we've added interior designer in several locations and also in some other rules after that. But all of these same clauses are all contained in 0120-04, which is about interior designers. So my question is, do we need to have it in both places? Because we've got all this rule, you know, applies to engineers, architects, landscape architects, and engineering interns. But then we've added interior designer into these clauses here, where we have a separate rule that covers interior designers that already has all these same clauses in it, but just specific to interior designers. So it seems kind of a duplication.
Yeah. No, that was added after some discussion. You know, I think after our last meeting, boy, it's hard to believe it was 2 years ago, Rick. You know, that's hard to believe. And so we, and then discussion with the attorney. You know, I think it was just sort of a compromise. Yeah, you're right. The statute does exist, or the rules rather exist for interior designers. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a part. And on some level, it could be somewhat superfluous, but, and I would have to yield to you, Ms. Doss, as far as what are your thoughts or your comments in regards to that? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. I think there are places where we have included interior designers in the list where they fit. There are other lists where architects, engineers, landscape architects are only listed because we are not a practice act. So we cautiously included interior designers in the list where it applied specifically to interior design as a profession along with the other professions. So it is my conclusion that we leave it as presented in the original rules.
If we do, then I think the authorities have to be amended to include the interior designer statute as well, because all the authorities now just reference the architects, engineers, and landscape architects authorities.
That's a very good catch. I will check the authorities to include the interior designers.
I mentioned something to Glenn about this earlier. There's in the rule 120-05-04, that's the section that talks about excess PDHs being carried forward. Those sections are completely out of date now, and we need to change those to where they're current, but that may be something that's part of the next rulemaking and not added here. And the last real question I had was about one of the things that Glenn brought up, which is on page 13, number 4, with that the clause about corporations and partnerships that have been shown as being completely deleted. And I was just wondering, would it be just what we're trying to do there is not to tell a corporation they have to have somebody residing in that state that is the person that is in responsible charge, but they just have to have a registrant. If we just, would it be better for us just to delete the word resident on that in the last line and leave the rest of that clause in place, so that we're telling these corporations and partnerships they have to have a registrant that is in responsible charge of those activities in that office?
I think that's what the land surveyors did, is we ended up keeping that language but deleting the word resident. Is that what the board would prefer to do? Yes? Yes.
Yes, I think so.
Yes, that makes sense.
No, it's like he was sitting in that meeting because there was a robust discussion on our land surveyors. And, obviously, you're a different industry, so we left the red line as it was. It was redlined the exact same way for them, except for they gave, there was a robust discussion, and they landed on, and honestly, and that the solution came from striking resident, just as James recommended, but that solution came in recess after Ms. Martin hammered that one out. So, James, you, sir, are an attorney, apparently, in the making.
Well, they just have a lot more concerns about like virtual work, which makes sense. So I didn't know if you guys would have the same concerns or not, but in the end, that's fine. We can do that. Thank you.
If we can go back to the PDHs, do we want to update it so that?
What's the, you have the citation there, James? If you could,
That's section 120-05.04. There's several subparagraphs there that deal with all the different professions of that. And each one of those, it talks about if you're making your renewal before 2023, then you can carry over. If it's after 2023, you can't carry over. And it seems to me we just need to say that, change that to say that excess PDHs may not be carried over to a future renewal period, and eliminate all that other language that's in those paragraphs.
No, that's a good update, primarily because that time period, needed to be included in there during that first renewal. But to your point, that's kind of aging out of that. So then if we're doing a cleanup that, and it doesn't create too big of a lift, we'll see if legal's going to take a look at that for a second. The hard part is going to be remembering all this in a motion.
Okay. So this is kind of a long section. Because it's, right, you have basic requirements for architects, and then it's like A through G, and then 1 through 9, and then basic requirements for engineers, and again, A through, and then landscape architects. So did everybody, is all of this out of date, or is it just for architects?
It's for everybody.
And you're wanting to say, you're saying none of this is really needed. All we need to say is you can't carry forward.
That's correct.
So what is it? Say, why don't, you can't carry forward PDHs?
Yeah, excess PDHs may not be carried over to a future renewal period.
And is that is that true for all the professions?
Yes.
Architects, engineers, landscape architects? And they all call them PDHs?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's in subparagraph 1B, 2B, 3B, all have that same language in them.
But then leave everything else?
Yeah, the rest of the language that's in those
Okay.
paragraphs is good. It's just, there's 1 or 2 sentences there that talk about the PDH.
So that'll be 1B,
2B.
1B for the architects, 2B for the engineers, and then 3B for the landscape architects?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and then also in 1E, 2E, and 3E, there's additional language in there about carryover PDHs that just needs to be deleted to clean those up also. So carryover PDHs, all that language goes away. And the next to last sentence in paragraph E in each of those.
Okay.
All
So
right.
I can add that into this rulemaking, but this is going to be a big rulemaking package. I can add that in on you guys' motion. And then it's been a while, I think, since this board has gone through rulemaking.
Yes.
So actually, before I get to my next part, were there any other edits to the language we should discuss? Okay. So let me just explain the process really quick, and then we can take the appropriate votes. So what we've done is we've taken the definitions, which have been worked on maybe as long as I've worked at this department. And then also the rules that the governor's office has asked us to present to you all based on the retrospective rule review. We've put them into one rulemaking package. So today what I'm going to ask for is a vote from the board, basically saying you want me to take this language as amended and start putting it through the process for rulemaking hearing. And then I'm also going to ask for approval from the board to set the rulemaking hearing. So what happens is I'll take this language, I'll amend it as we've discussed today, and then it gets routed through the department. So my supervisor will review it, my general counsel will review it, Glenn will review it, Glenn's the supervisor. It goes all the way up through the commissioner, and that does take some time. And then after that, we have the rulemaking hearing, and so that is when that language is going to come before you again. The reason why part of this takes so much time is the law requires like a lot of waiting periods. So I have to file with APD a rulemaking hearing. I think it's 54 days prior to the rulemaking hearing. So usually what we do is I'll just count backwards from the days. Once I get the approval that I can set this for a hearing, I'll just see when your next board meeting is. That is at least 54 days from the day that I can file it. So at that point, you'll see all this language again, and that is sort of the more official vote, plus there's going to be all those documents that go with it. So the documents that go with it are going to be, the economic justification, things like that. I don't think there's going to be a lot of economic issues with this, but we have to file all those with it. So then once we have our rulemaking hearing, and that's also a chance when we have the rulemaking hearing, right, for members of the public or probably members of the profession to come forward, and if they have any comments, they'll give us comments on this language. After we do that, the Attorney General's office gets to review the language. If they have substantial edits, I might have to bring it back before you, but likely their edits are not going to be so bad that I have to bring it back before you. It'll probably just, if they don't change the substance of the material, then at that point we will file with the legislature. So it does take a while. So I just wanted to explain that process with you all because I do think it's been a while since this board had a rulemaking hearing. So today I'm asking for approval to move forward with this language as amended, and then approval to set the rulemaking hearing once I have the appropriate approvals from within the state.
I would like to make the motion that we do that.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Thompson in that regard. Do we have a second? Got a second from Mr.
I have
Ash?
one question.
Yes.
When you say as amended, is it as amended as we're seeing it here, or are there other amendments we're not seeing?
With all of your amendments that she noted.
All the amendments that we just talked about today.
Can you put those minutes, just those comments in the meeting minutes, just so we can, since they were Alton's and James, just somewhere where we can just see them all. Is that okay?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Sure
That's
can.
fine.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so, and then we've got a motion, and then we've got a second, and then any further discussion? All right. Hearing none then, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Hearing none then, that's passed with those edits, and then we'll note that in the minutes. Yep. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, looks like we're ready for the committee report, new business, and then public comment will be last. So, Mr. Collins, you're playing double duty now. So if you want to update the board on the engineer committee.
Yeah, so the engineering committee met this morning, considered two items. One was an application for registration for a applicant that had a non-ABET accredited engineering technology degree, which we reviewed and agreed to move forward with that application to continue to move forward. And then the other was a discussion about mapping and the use of LiDAR data and whether what we wanted to do to issue some caution out to our registrants about using LiDAR data as opposed to using actual surveys. So we're going to look at that a little bit further and look at the reference manual and see if there's maybe some things we need to update in that reference manual and come back with those recommendations at a future date.
Thank you, sir. All right. Looks like, do we have any new business?
I would just like to thank Melanie Doss for chairing the board this past year. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Jason for sitting in the spot.
He'd say just out of reach of Melanie. You noticed that, right? Yeah. All
And I've already
right.
put a request in to him, is that if you look at the picture on this system here, it looks different than this room here. So we're thinking maybe.
All right, very well. Any other new business? All right.
I would also like to thank Laura for her hard work.
Yes.
Yes.
I know
Thank you so much.
you've been through a lot of gyrations with this board, so thank you for being patient with us.
No, thank you. And just as an update, so yes, Chloe got an opportunity and left the state, and I don't begrudge her of that, even though it was, not great timing since I had just started transitioning her on this board. But, everybody does what's best, for them and their career. In the meantime, we have already started interviewing. So, I expect that we'll have somebody a little bit more permanent on this board pretty soon. But in the meantime, I'm overseeing it. And then I have a pretty large team. You saw Ariel Carter's name was on the legal report. She will probably be contacting some of you because she's going to handle a lot of these cases for me. And then for rules, another member of my team may be helping me with some of that. But there should be no issue with coverage in the meantime, even if you are seeing a handful of names as opposed to just one name. But, in the end, I oversee all of them, so I know what's going on for the most part. So, yes, thank you so much for your patience.
All right. All right, looks like we're ready for public comment then. Let me, Alex, is anyone signed in? And this, if you're online, if you wanted to make a public comment, this is your opportunity to do so. Please sign in to the chat box. And then, Alex, if you could let me know in a second, I'm going to go check the pad at the podium.
I would like to make a comment about Jason's inability to deliver this board meeting within the time constraints that we normally have, and Melanie set a precedent. Melanie and Rick both set precedents that man, you're going to have to tighten up.
I have failed.
It's going to reflect. I just. Well, you know, Rick Thompson used to be an auctioneer. He probably didn't want to share that with you, but that's probably how we got that done. So. All right, y'all behave. Okay, so public comments. We don't have any. This off. If anyone inside the. Okay, no one there. We don't have anyone signed in. Alex, do we have anyone online? Okay, no one online. So no public comments shared. It's your pleasure to adjourn. It's your will.
Motion to adjourn.
You could just adjourn if you like to, because we got an agenda. Yeah.
This meeting is adjourned.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.